Okay, great. I think Lee and I are both recording now.
All right, do we want to let folks in to the meeting?
Shall we?
Let's do it. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining our Code Connect meeting this evening. We're going to give folks just a couple more minutes.
Muy buenas tardes, noches. Bienvenidos a nuestra reunión de Code Connect. Vamos a darle a las personas unos momentos más para que se unan a la reunión. Gracias.
Just a friendly reminder to mute yourself. Thank you.
Y un recordatorio amistoso de que silencien sus micrófonos. Gracias.
Okay, I think we'll get started. Before we start the presentation, I'd like to introduce this meeting as a bilingual space. And with that, I'm going to have our interpreter, Mortado, introduce the interpretation options for Spanish.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Mortado, and we are very grateful and very happy with the commitment of Code Connect and the city in the effort of ensuring that language justice is at the top of what they do. So this meeting is going to be presented in English, but those folks who speak Spanish will have the opportunity to join and also to ask questions. So should there be any questions in Spanish, we ask that you go to the bottom of the screen and you select the little globe and click English so that you are able to hear the English questions, the Spanish questions in English. This is very important in order so that we can create a multilingual space. Also, we ask that as you get feedback or comments, that we don't speak too fast so that everybody can understand and participate. I'm going to repeat now this information in Spanish. Muy buenas tardes, noches. Les agradecemos por su presencia en la tarde-noche del día de hoy. Toda esta reunión va a tener la posibilidad de participar en español. Solo tienen que ir a la parte inferior de la pantalla y poner español para poder escuchar toda la información en español. Si se conectan desde una tableta o desde un teléfono inteligente, por favor vayan a los 3 punticos, seleccionen español y terminado para que puedan escuchar en español. Bueno, muchas gracias. Thank you, Max. I went ahead and made the announcement. Back to you.
Thanks so much. Okay, We're just about to start, but before we do, I'd love to have Bo introduce the project and the consultant team.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Bo Dobrinsky, Assistant Director with the City County Planning Department. As many of you may know, after a 4-year process, our comprehensive plan was adopted in October of last year by both City Council and Board of County Commissioners. A big component of the implementation of this comprehensive plan will be the complete rewrite of our Unified Development Ordinance, which of course is our zoning ordinance and subdivision ordinance together that applies both in the city and the county. So as a part of that implementation effort, we've contracted with Code Studio, a consultant, I think based out of Texas, but they've got staff all over. And I'd like to just introduce the project manager, Max, as you've been talking, is on this call. We've also got Colin Scarf, who's a principal with the consultant, and I will let them introduce the rest of their team and any other sub consultants that they like. And if you have any questions, please let us know. Go right ahead.
Thanks so much, Bo. Appreciate it. So as Bo mentioned, tonight is our first Code Connect meeting. This will be a series of events, virtual events that we host, sort of as
he needs
the
to just let
Unified
you
Development
be the
Ordinance.
expert, you know.
If folks could meet them, thank you so much. As part of the Code Connect series that we'll be doing, we'll be having check-ins approximately every 2 months or so to try to provide updates to the Unified Development Code, Unified Development Ordinance rewrite as we move forward through this. Before we do, just want to welcome folks again to the meeting and set some meeting organization rules.
I thought I was supposed to.
So generally, we are, just as a heads up, we're going to be recording this meeting. We'll be giving a short presentation up front, ideally no more than 15 minutes or so. And we're going to follow that with a Q&A afterwards. And ideally, if folks can hold their questions until the end, that would be fantastic. If folks want to, ideally we'll let folks sort of raise their hand and mute themselves, or raise their hand and ask questions in the order in which they're received. And again, please remain muted until it's your turn to ask a question. And then if you'd like to raise your hand using this feature in the Zoom chat to ask a question, that would be fantastic. And please, if you can, at least initially, unless there's more space and more time, if you could please limit yourself to 1 question per person at first. We would really appreciate that. So as we jump into this exciting new project, we wanted to reiterate or just establish some project goals for this effort. So really, the Unified Development Ordinance is a really complicated document. It has a very comprehensive extent to what it regulates and what it does. Our goal here, one of our biggest project goals here, is to really ensure that this document going forward is going to be extremely easy to understand to the best of our abilities, make it clear, try to simplify things like different approval processes for development, things like that. We also want to ensure that as part of this project, we are trying to ensure housing choice and affordability. And what that really means is to allow for a mix of housing types throughout Durham and to encourage more of the creation of affordable housing throughout the city and county as well, make that a lot easier to do. As part of this effort, we're of course going to be working with the built environment. So trying to promote transit-oriented, for lack of a better word, and pedestrian-friendly development patterns in the city and county, while at the same time preserving Durham's distinct, special, unique character. So that's another key project goal for us. We also, related to recreation and open space, we want to ensure that we're increasing open space and tree canopy coverage to the best of our abilities and promote sustainable development as well as part of that. And most, sort of importantly, you might remember the comprehensive plan project that happened just before this. We are intending to implement that plan through this UDO. So really making sure that we can implement the actions and policies and goals of the comprehensive plan and other adopted plans as part of this effort. So just to set the stage a little bit, for folks who might not be familiar with what a UDO is and what it does in Durham, this is sort of the process of how this all works. So you just, as a city and county, just adopted your comprehensive plan. This is really a high level document. It's the community vision, and it's really something that guides where and how future development should occur in Durham. And it doesn't get really into the details too much, but it's a document that gets updated every 10 to 20 years and is a forward-thinking document. What we're working on right now is the UDO, and these are really the development rules that implement the vision established in the comprehensive plan. So this is the zoning, as Bo had mentioned, in the development rules, and defines the details of where and how private development can occur today and once it's adopted. And so that all means to say that when new development comes in to Durham, this is sort of what they rely on. They rely on this zoning to submit a development project, to get it approved, and to ultimately get it constructed. And so just a little bit about Code Studio. We are the consultant team that's leading this effort. And so we have a lot of experience working on zoning codes, urban development, or unified development ordinances, and other similar regulatory documents that regulate private property and land use and things like that. We've been doing that since 2006. We really try to build and construct plans and codes that reflects community character and do very much what Durham is setting out to do as part of this effort. We are really, we critically value creating vibrant and mixed use and walkable places in all of the codes that we write. Durham will be no exception to that. And we really pride ourselves in being able to generate understandable and really visually graphic regulations to help facilitate understanding and user friendliness in our codes. So that doesn't mean that we've just worked in North Carolina. We work all over the country, work nationally, but we of course have quite a bit of experience in North Carolina. So all of the specific state regulations that we are held or sort of constrained by, we have lots of experience working on those as well. So you're in good hands, and we're looking forward to working on this. So just a little bit about the folks who are on this call and going to be working on this specifically. I am your project manager, Max Pastore. Colin Scarf is also on this call. He is our principal in charge, and he's specifically had a lot of experience working in Raleigh and in Asheville in North Carolina. So not too far and pretty recent stuff. And we're pretty excited with what types of development has happened since the implementation of those codes. And we also have Ryan Johnson here. He's a critical part of the team and is going to be helping us in the drafting process. You're going to see him a lot. And we also have Shanique Mason. She's going to be helping us to sort of extend our project team as well. And in addition to just the Code Studio team, we have some other sub-consultants, a couple of whom are, or few of whom are quite local to the area. We have Alicia Hilton Daniel. She has her own design and construction firm in Durham, if you don't already know. She's going to be helping us out and has continued to already help us out with her local architectural expertise in the city and county. With her, we have Sarah Lockenman, and she is an expert in Durham when it comes to historic preservation. So she's been an extremely helpful resource in sort of helping us get through that process and understand the context of the city more generally. We have Eric Orozco from Neighboring Concepts. He's actually out of Charlotte, and his team is helping us with bigger types of development that is going to happen likely closer to transit-oriented places. We also have Neil Heller, who's with Neighborhood Workshop. He's going to help us with more of the market analysis component of things. And very, very importantly, we have Tawana Allen, who is on this call, and she is going to be really leading the equitable engagement and public outreach effort as part of this project. So with that, I'm going to let her speak for a few minutes to introduce our equitable engagement approach.
Thank you, Max. I am excited to be a part of this team. And when we think about what we mean for equitable engagement, we are really seeking out to foster inclusive decision-making processes that include and address the diverse needs, perspectives, and priorities of our Durham communities. We want to make sure that we remove all barriers that different communities may experience when we try to engage with them. We want to be respectful of our diverse communities, and we want to tailor the processes to them so that they have an opportunity to prepare. That's what we mean by equitable engagement. Why is this so important to us? Well, we recognize that in our past policies and decision makings, sometimes those decisions have negatively impacted some of our residents while benefiting others. So looking forward, we are working towards an equitable engagement that can lead to equitable outcomes while also addressing the disparities of our past. We are being very deliberate in how we engage with our communities, and we want to hear from them. When we think about who it is that we are engaging with and who our communities are, we are specifically looking for members, community members, whether or not, regardless of their socioeconomic status, race, ethnicity, age, gender, or any other demographic factors. We specifically want to engage with those communities that have been historically marginalized and most likely not to have been heard. And so with that, we think about, when we think about the diversity in our communities, we think about our youth, we think about people with disabilities, we think about members from the LGBTQAI community, we think about immigrants, we think about people who have limited English proficiency. These are the groups that we really are wanting to hear from. We want to hear their lived experiences, and we want to understand their identities. So when we think about how are we going to engage with our communities, again, we are being deliberate in going into the communities to meet with our community members. We want to have focus groups with them. We want to provide online and paper surveys for community members. We are going to be having community meetings, participating in community meetings, whether or not it's through PAC, community meetings, whether or not it's just overall meetings in our community centers. We are going into the communities, and I'm happy to lead this effort as far as going into the communities and engaging with our diverse populations. When we think about when are we going to engage? Our communities will have opportunities beginning in February all the way until September 2025. So there will be multiple opportunities, ongoing opportunities for how and when you can participate. So we encourage people to continue to follow this website or check this website, because we're always going to be posting information about when we're engaging, where, and you'll have an opportunity to join us with those efforts. Where we're going to be in libraries, we're going to be in recreation centers, places of worship, community groups, all throughout Durham, so that we can make sure that we have a very diverse and balanced perspective from all of our community members. We recognize that we needed to do better in our past work, and this is our effort. We are committed to making this successful, and we want to engage with everyone. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you here on this call, and even more people with this equitable engagement opportunity. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tawana. And so Tawana had mentioned a project website, and here is that information for you right here. It's engagedurham.com/NewUDO. And again, this is sort of the HQ where you can find the latest and greatest information, the most up-to-date information. And here is the project email address if you want to send direct messages. So with that, this is not our first engagement opportunity that we've had. We hosted some open house meetings a couple weeks ago in person in 2 different places throughout the city. And I'm going to have my colleague Ryan just summarize them briefly for us so that we can get into more of the Q&A.
Thank you, Max. So what you see on the slide in front of you is the sort of image we shared on social media to publicize the open houses. And on the right-hand side are small versions of the actual posters, or some of the posters we displayed at these open houses. Next slide, please. And these posters are also available on the website if you do want to go and look at these. And so earlier in February, we had 2 open houses at 2 different locations. We had just under 70 attendees at these open houses and received more than 200 written comments on these posters. And you can see those in some of these pictures of folks actually putting the post-it notes up on the posters. Next slide. So the posters at these open houses were categorized into 3 themes. The first sort of set was focused on housing in Durham. And some of the comments we received really looked at housing affordability, different types of housing, and then different measures that the UDO can do to encourage the creation of certain types of housing. And I should say that these boards all included sort of conversations, starting questions organized around these 3 themes. Next slide. On the transportation front, shown here, again, we received several comments back based on the questions we posted on these boards, looking at sidewalk and bike network gaps, the different things that development projects can do to improve the transportation network in Durham, and other transportation-related concerns, things like neighborhood walkability and bikeability. Next slide. The third theme was focused on the environment. And so, again, these sort of questions we asked included things about local impacts of development on the environment, flooding and stormwater, open space, recreational facilities and amenities as well. And we've received a lot of great feedback on both what is happening in Durham today in terms of environmental impacts and what development can do and what the UDO can do to help address some of those concerns and improve the environment.
Thanks so much, Ryan. So in addition to the open houses that we hosted, as well as our Code Connect tonight, we have a project survey that is going out. And please click the link, which you probably can't click in this presentation at the moment, but the project website does have this on here as well. We have just 10 questions. We're trying to keep it pretty short and sweet, really trying to understand the basics here based on those 3 same topics that Ryan had mentioned: housing, environment, transportation. It is also bilingual, like everything else that we're aiming to do as part of this effort. And at the moment, it will be open through March 22nd. And that might be extended depending on the feedback that we receive. So here's a bit of a glimpse of what that looks like. So we're looking forward to getting some responses. So please spread the word as much as you can. The more responses we get to this survey, the better we can tailor our future engagement efforts. And so just a little highlight of next steps. We're right here. We're just getting started on our public engagement process. We're in the middle of just sort of getting into our code audit and approach. That's basically what is working, what is not working with UDO, how might we go about changing it to make it work better and to incorporate many of the comments that we've been receiving and just get it more in line with the comprehensive plan. And that will then get us into our code drafting. Before we start our code drafting, we will be engaging again with you all to sort of begin to give our takeaways of what we've heard as part of this audit and approach, and sort of get a confirmation of direction before we start doing our drafting. So we would like to open up the discussion. We are open to all questions, but in case we need some questions to get the conversation going, we've set a few up here. One is generally, in your opinions, what sets Durham apart from other communities, meaning the things that we would like to retain. And we can sort of think about how that impacts our UDO and how that might impact development rules. Any concerns that you might have with the existing UDO or just current development that's happening in Durham. Any emerging issues that might not be adequately addressed in the UDO today. And then, of course, are there any new developments or buildings in Durham that generally reflect what you'd like to see in Durham going forward? Or if not, any examples elsewhere that you might like to see, or things that you would like to see more generally that's not shown or not reflective or not being shown or existing in Durham today? And so as we open this conversation up, I'm going to have my colleague Colin help facilitate the discussion and facilitate the comments. And call people's names. Just a reminder for how this works. Feel free to type in any comments you have in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand. As we mentioned before, we're going to try to answer your questions in the order that they're received.
Well, it looks like our first question is from Ken Pugh.
Hi. Thanks for doing this. I'm going for the number 2, and I understand you might actually have addressed this in one of the meetings. The current UDO, they had a change just recently that buffers in categories such as residential can be eliminated. That if it's any type of residential zoning, it needs 0 buffers to different type of residential zoning. And I feel like if you've got an apartment zoning next to a single house, you should have the same buffers that were in the previous UDO. So that's my question.
Is it, so you're saying, go ahead.
I guess we'd have to defer to Bo on that one, since maybe those are some of the changes that came in the changes.
Yes. Yeah, thanks, Colin. Yeah, the ordinance has recently changed so that if you have a similar use, you're not required to have a buffer in between the uses unless you are mass grading or some limited use standard requires it. And so Ken's right that if you had an apartment building next to a single family, you wouldn't necessarily have a buffer, whereas previously that's what the ordinance required. And so I appreciate the comment and the feedback.
Okay.
Is there an answer or a question to be answered? I'm basically just confirming.
My question is, I heard a rumor, and this is that you would actually, somebody in Code Studios somewhere had actually said, yes, that's the buffer should really be replaced and as they were in the previous UDO. But maybe that's
I don't think that's been determined yet. I will say that a lot of the buffers as they were written before were contributing to more spread out development, and the engagement efforts that we undertook with the comprehensive plan really are centered around less suburban development, or at least in many instances. And so I do think that the buffers would be looked at either way.
I think we may have mentioned it at the JCC PC meeting in terms of like that was something we want to look at. So I think as part of this rewrite, we want to kind of comprehensively relook at the buffers and try to move away potentially from more land intensive buffers and maybe look at some like step backs and things like that as well.
Okay.
We did receive a couple of questions in the chat. So I'm actually going to ask these in reverse order that I received them. But first question is, does this only cover city limits or also land within the county?
No, this is both the city and the county.
Wonderful. And the next question is regarding, do we have a goal of how many Durham residents we want to talk to in our outreach efforts? And what does success look like in terms of reaching or hearing from historically excluded populations? So that may be for you, Max, or Tawana.
I would say, just to start, and I would love to have Tawana speak to this, we don't have a specific number that we've set as a target, but Tawana, did you want to speak more specifically?
As many people as we possibly can.
Yeah.
I think would be our goal.
I agree with everything Max and Colin have stated. I'm specifically looking at census data for the city of Durham. And so looking at all of the demographic representations that were noted on the census, I'm in the process of calculating a formula as to about how many people per subgroup represented on the census that we'd like to engage with. But that does not go to exclude anyone. We are very much wanting as much participation as possible from all of our community members.
Thank you. No other questions in the chat yet, so we'll leave that open, as well as folks who want to raise their hands. It looks like Rosemary was next.
Hi, yes, this is Rosemary James. I'm with Inspired to Empower, and I am sort of representing a community that are not necessarily going to use online engagement tools. Are there any other options for them other than maybe not even in person, but are there paper options for them to fill in the survey to provide their input?
I wonder if we should consider making the survey on paper, I think, and see if we can make that accessible to folks that way. So that's a really good idea.
And Rosemary, I'm happy to work with you and your community in making sure that you all have paper options as well. So absolutely.
Thank you very much. I did have another question that just came to mind. Are there any changes with regards to historical homes?
As part of the separate, just changes to.
As far as the rewrite is concerned, because I'm thinking if we can, because there's some sense of community or the look and feel of Durham in certain neighborhoods, and if we're changing some of the zoning or ordinances, will they impact those historical homes as well, where someone could come in and purchase a historical home and do whatever?
If
like
Sure, to I think try to simply answer your question, and I'm open to other thoughts from Colin or Bo, is the idea is that if a house is deemed historic, like it's in a historic district or it's a historic landmark, those are regulated through separate rules. The zoning doesn't really get to do much to touch some of that stuff in terms of preserving a particular structure. However, if it is a historic district, depending on what type of historic district it is, there are various ways in which the zoning can change the use, can change maybe some of the other buildings that are on the structure, move things around, or if there's it goes through a special process to go through to get demolished or something like that, it would have to follow certain standards to be built and get reviewed through historic preservation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say, Max. I mean, the only thing I'd add on would just reiterate that the review criteria for how we regulate local historic districts and landmarks will not be changed as a part of this project. But we already do not regulate national historic districts, and of course, like Max said, there's some overlap in terms of impacts. But
thanks, Bo.
Great. I saw Scott Carter has your hand up, and then I'll read
Can
a
you turn
few
it
more
down?
written questions we received.
Yeah, hi, this is Scott Carter. I want to just make a comment about a big concern with the existing UDO, and I'm not sure if it's still in place, although I think it is, but I've served on the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and one of the elements that was in the UDO was called payment in lieu. And if there was a sidewalk or other facility that was required for the developer to implement, and there was some strong reason why they said that they could not implement it, say they didn't want to put a sidewalk on their front border frontage, whatever, or they couldn't make a bridge to connect the sidewalk to some other facility that was adjacent to them or something, then they would have an option to have payment in lieu, where they would just put some money in a pot, and then presumably the city would take care of that down the road. Well, that didn't work very well, because they could make a payment in lieu and the facility that was needed would never get built. And because of limitations of the city staff, or there wasn't enough money, payment in lieu didn't cover it or something. So that's really my biggest concern about the existing UDO, and what I'd like to see eliminated is get rid of payment in lieu.
I can quickly speak to that to say, and I'll let Bo speak on that a little bit further, but you are not the first person to bring up this concern. And it's something that we've been taking a look at, and we expect to take a look at as part of our audit to see what other options are available.
Thank you.
Bo? Sure.
yeah, I mean, I'll just, that we've heard that concern from others. I'll even say that the way the current UDO is written, you don't even need a special reason. You just have to not be a new subdivision, and that option is available to you. One current issue that I think we have is making sure that fee in lieu is at the appropriate rate, so that it isn't advantageous for them to pay it. So that's one issue that isn't necessarily the regulation, that we also need to make sure we right size if we keep it.
Yep, thank you. Glad you're already aware of that.
Great. So next up, I saw a few questions in the chat. One, how many languages will the survey be available in? I believe that we're currently planning to do it in English and Spanish, but I'll open it up to Bo or anyone else to correct me if I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, that is correct. Certainly, if there's another language that would be beneficial, or someone's aware, we'll work with you and do what we can. But those will be the two that we'll have readily available.
Great. We had another written question. I'll say it's from Danielle Spurlock, but I do see that you're unmuted. Were you hoping to ask yours out loud as well, or do you want me to read it?
Oh, reading's fine.
Okay. Well, the question is, housing is, of course, a priority in Durham, so is gentrification. How is Code Studio preparing to integrate anti-displacement into the new UDO? Supply alone will not address affordable housing.
So we can speak a little bit about this. We, unfortunately, in North Carolina, do have some limits to what we're able to do in terms of requiring affordable housing as part of our zoning. So we're going to try our best to be as creative as possible based on the experience that we've done, or that we've had in other jurisdictions in North Carolina, to make affordable housing easy and to incentivize it as best as we can within the legal constraints that we have in North Carolina. Any other? Yes, please.
Just as a follow-up, that is not really going to inclusionary zoning and its limitations too often is used as an off-ramp to having the conversation that needs to be had. Increasing density, but not thinking about where it goes, knowing that new construction is going to be out of the price range of a number of people is a displacement technique that is going to happen with this UDO if we don't take it into account. So I don't want to hear necessarily how we're barred by the state and state preemption. There are things that we're not barred that get done on a regular basis that I'd like to know how you're going to deal with it.
So Danielle, I don't think we're going to pretend that we have the answer for you, because it's a multifaceted issue. And I don't think anybody's figured this out. So I think what we are committed to is trying to talk to as many folks as possible so that they can help us understand the issues. And we have Tawana on board, and the city and county is committed to trying to have as many conversations as possible with you guys so that we can understand your issues and see what we can do, because it's a very complicated issue that I don't think anybody's figured out. So we're fully committed to trying to do the best that we can here.
Okay, next question next hand I saw raised was L. Ritchie. And Ken, I do see your hand up. I'll get to you once we've gone through the first time questions. Thank you. See.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. My name's Laura Ritchie. I'm here as a member of the Cultural Advisory Board and the Public Art Committee. We're in the midst of a joint city-county planning process to develop a new cultural roadmap. So kind of a comprehensive plan specifically for arts and culture in Durham. It'll be a 5-year plan. This is the first time we've taken this on in Durham since 2004. And we know that UDO can be a way to encourage funding for the arts, and that it has played that role in Durham in the past. But so I'm wondering how or if the arts are showing up in this process now. Maybe they're under that environment heading. And also just wanted to hear from y'all about the best way for us to align our efforts with yours, since we're working on this at the same time. Thank you.
Thanks so much. I'm thrilled to hear that the timing is lining up for this. So there are a lot. I would say environment is not the only topic in which art can really go into all of the topics in many ways. Beyond just trying to find ways to incentivize more of it happening in the code, we have ways of sort of giving trade-offs in different design tools to sort of encourage things like murals and other types of public art that would be part of a development project that you would have the chance to review. We do that in a lot of jurisdictions that we've worked in, and we would certainly be open to incorporating that and other strategies depending on your interest.
Great. Next question was from Bonita Green. Go ahead and unmute.
I have a different question now, but I don't want to ask like too many questions right in a row. First I want to say, like the person that was speaking earlier about historic neighborhoods, I think we're talking about historically redlined neighborhoods, not necessarily neighborhoods with a historic context, because what we see in these neighborhoods are displacement, through building larger, bigger and more expensive homes, and not taking into context the homes that are already there in the place. And so they just kind of stick out. And the symbolism is that we just want you all to go. We're building bigger and better homes than what you live in. And the new people are going to come in and use code enforcement to push the people out. So just going to leave that hanging and then ask my question. My question is that, the UDO, the current UDO, I've heard so many people say it's very complicated to read. Even people who are contractors in the development, it is very difficult to read and understand. So will that be addressed so that it's, not as complicated, so that, even a citizen, a homeowner would be able to read it and have some understanding of it?
We're going to try and make it as understandable as possible. understanding that it, you know, it is a fairly complex technical document and it is kind of a legal document as well. But I think, you know, we try really hard to kind of organize the information in such a way that it is, let's say, more understandable than most development codes. Still got a long way to go, but there's always room for improvement, sure.
And to that point, I think what we really take a lot of pride in is being graphic to the best of our abilities, you know, where language doesn't always get you there. We try to include graphics that sort of walk you through or explain a rule, how is something measured, to try to facilitate that process as well, to make things more understandable. To your previous comment or question about displacement and historically redlined communities, I'm really glad that you raised that, Benita. I would say that we're going to take a lot of lessons learned from some of the work that we've done in a previous project not too far away from here in Charlottesville, Virginia, where we've worked. That was a huge part of not only the comprehensive plan update that they did, but the zoning update that we did after that, to understand and try to work with those communities to try to zone them in such a way to ensure that displacement was minimized to the best of our abilities, while also not, you know, giving away, ensuring folks can build wealth intergenerationally. There's always a balance to be struck with all that stuff. But I'm really glad that you raised that.
I think the key in Charlottesville specifically was we spent a lot of time talking to folks that lived in, you know, the potentially impacted neighborhoods to kind of try and understand what they wanted to see. So, you know, there are simple things like, you know, maybe your neighborhood doesn't get upzoned, or, you know, maybe it gets downzoned. I think trying to level the playing field across the city so that, you know, one neighborhood isn't necessarily impacted more than another neighborhood because it allows more density, for example. It's something I think we would like to look at.
I think it's also important that you physically visit some of these neighborhoods, because it's, you know, what we see more are people who sit behind a desk and look at a map. You don't physically go into the places and talk to the people. It's great to talk to the people, but talk to them in the places, in the spaces. They can show you, because the people who live there understand all of the conditions.
That is the key purpose of our engagement efforts. Ms. Green, thank you for mentioning that again. And so with our efforts, we will be going into communities, hosting sessions for community members to ask questions, find out more information about the UDO, and to really help them understand what it is, why we're doing it, how it's going to impact and affect their community. So thank you for that suggestion.
All right, we have one more written question from Becky. It's how will the affordable housing density bonus, section 6.6, be modified to conform to the new comprehensive plan? And a follow-up, can loosening of at least some restrictions that occurred in the SCAD amendment, the recent adoption of SCAD, be offered as a bonus for affordable housing through that program? It might be a best question for Bo.
But I think we're going to relook at the affordable housing density bonus as part of this project. And I could be wrong, Bo, but I don't think it's been used a lot as currently written. So I think we would want to look at, you know, why is it not being used or hasn't been used, and kind of see if we can calibrate it a little bit better so it works more effectively in the right places.
Yeah, it's 100% our hope and approach. The SCAD text amendment didn't modify the affordable housing density bonus or directly relate. The original application had some version of that sort of affordable housing density program. but that was removed, so it had no impact. But yeah, we really want to see, get creative and find ways to have the used more often.
Yeah, I can tell you it's not easy, balancing an incentive that makes financial sense that developers will do it without, forcing down development rights. You could really do it if you really force down development rights, and people couldn't do anything. If they wanted to do something, they had to do our affordable housing, use the affordable housing bonus. So it's about finding that balance, and it is incredibly tricky and intricate to figure that out.
This is Becky, and I can't find the response to raise my hand, but I wanted to just say about the SCAD regulations to maybe that add to the question there, my question, that there a lot of people in the community have problems with the changes with how SCAD, the loosening of restrictions was going to affect the neighboring properties. But another problem with it is that it's supposed to be for to create more affordability. And at least if you're going to degrade the quality of the neighborhood with these by making them more dense and removing space and trees and everything, that you could at least do it only if we get affordable housing in return. It really hurts to get rid of those buffers and have the house that's built cost $450,000.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Yeah.
It's just financially, it's tough to get unsubsidized affordable capital A development. The numbers that we're hearing, and they're probably more than this, but like for every affordable unit, you have to build 10 market rate units. Is not kind of the numbers that we've been hearing. So we've been trying harder to try and make the whole community more affordable to the extent that we can. And that's by thinking about, where can you add a little bit more density across the entire city to kind of like spread that cost differential out across the entire community.
But how can that be affordable density?
Well,
unaffordable density.
I would say to that point, Becky, something that we try really hard to do is to try to calibrate our rules to encourage more of someone who already lives on an existing property to, maybe build more multi-generational housing. So maybe that means that they add a unit for their adult child, or they're getting to retire and they want to build a backyard apartment for themselves, and the front house is just too much for them. And trying to sort of incrementally add density that way, where it's sort of like your mom and pop style, rather than a developer comes in, clears the property, builds for huge single family house. We're trying to sort of encourage the first option with the zoning that we do. And a lot of that means that the trees that are old and established and create the buffers retain and stay in place. So we would try to do our best to calibrate that. That's something that we found to be helpful in other jurisdictions. I don't know if that gets to your question.
That could be something like, making sure you're keeping the original house or unit on the lot in order to get access to additional units, for example.
Sounds great.
Great. We did have two other people, so I'll call on Ken, and then go ahead and unmute yourself, Ken. And then after that will be Melissa.
Okay. So one of the things is transparency. And the neighborhood meeting, which is in the UDO, doesn't really work for transparency. I know the planning staff, in fact, I was just at one of their meetings, are trying to figure out exactly what to do with neighborhood meetings that really are more like not communication, but simply presentation, if you will.
Mhm.
And so, and I'll, like, in fact, even mention the appropriate here. So, like, one of the things would be that all the development things that development plans that the developer turns in should be immediately accessible to the public, so that everybody has the knowledge and you can take a look at them, the traffic impact analysis and so forth. And then also the questions and answers that are raised in a neighborhood meeting should be publicly available so that anybody can look at them. I'll stop with it there and say that you ought to be concentrating on making transparency in neighborhood meetings and change that entire thing to make for more transparency. But along that line, where are your Post-it notes, your 200 Post-it notes, making that transparent to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
I see your PDF just has the slides, but not the Post-it notes. So I can see what other people.
Well, we are working to transcribe those Post-it notes, and I think we're committed to getting those comments up onto the project website just as soon as we can. So thanks for those comments, Ken.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And Melissa, go ahead.
Hi, I'm a grad student at North Carolina State University. I'm studying master's degrees in landscape architecture. And one of the things that I really am excited about is there any opportunity for grad students to engage in the community and to interact? I know you guys are mentioning you're going to go to the community, have this community engagement, because what we bring is research, we bring innovation, we bring solutions, and we want that exposure. How can I interact with y'all and have that opportunity to volunteer?
We need to get your contact information, and we can follow up with you. Is the best way just to email that NewUDO email address? Would that work?
Yeah, I can also give my telephone number and email and so forth. Yes, it's not just me, it's a group. I represent the Women's of Landscape Architecture.
Okay, why don't you in the chat send your contact details, and I think Ryan will get it, and only Ryan will see it, and so we can reach back out to you that way, Melissa.
Yes, and thank you. That's a perfect segue as we reach the last few minutes. Tawana did ask me to let everyone on the call know that if you do want to follow up with our engagement team, either to organize meetings in your communities or with your interest groups, please leave your contact information in the meeting chat. It'll go directly to me. Other people won't see it. And I'll share that with Tawana and our engagement team so that we can follow up with meetings or events or whatever works in the future. And also, as Max put on the screen, we do have the project email address and the website, which will contain any upcoming events and other ways that you can get involved with the project and stay informed on what's going on.
Thanks, Ryan. And I would also say that, since we have our the project newsletter and things like that, we will try to compile all those contact information together so that for future engagement efforts that we do, that we can be a bit more strategic, and you don't have to necessarily always go to the project website, but that we can send out emails in addition to our social media posts and things like that. And so I know that we only have 2 minutes left. So I just want to say thank you all very, very much for your attendance at this meeting. This is a great start. Again, this is only the very beginning. We're just scratching the surface on getting started. The next time that we plan to talk to you, we'll probably have a few more answers or things to respond for you all to react to in terms of our initial takes on the UDO, maybe potentially some approaches of how we might go about addressing some of the concerns that you've been mentioning, or just the general topics. But please, please do not forget about the project survey. I'm just going to leave this up again one more time. But we would really love it if you could take the project survey and send it around to all of your your friends and neighbors and colleagues who live and work and play in Durham, so that we can use this as a great starting point to help with our audit approach. With that, is there anything else that you'd like to say, Bo, to close out tonight?
No, I just want to thank everybody for attending. I know that the department's very excited about the project, and this is sort of the part of our initial kickoff in terms of engagement. And so just welcome and please stay engaged and get the word out. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Bo. And thank you all again for your attendance, and we'll hope to speak with you all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.